Hi, hello, and welcome to the Sports Exchange. I'm your host, Carole Beckford. Hope you've been enjoying the conversations we've been having about the business of sports. Well, we've looked at venues, we've looked at event planning, major events, and we're going to be looking at TV production. But today on this program, we're going to be looking at some what we call minor sports and how they have impacted on Jamaica and the rest of the region. But before I do, here are some news. The summer of 2023 will be very busy for teams across the region. Haiti and Jamaica will represent the region in the Women's World Cup in New Zealand and Australia, July 20 to August 20. The World Cup of Netball will be in Cape Town from July 28 to August 6, and Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica will represent. And of course, a bunch of teams from the region will be in Budapest for the World Athletics Championships from August 19 to 27. In some business news, the World Cup prize money for women have tripled since 2019 and has gone up 10 times since 2015. The prize money is now $152 million. Dallas, Texas has been named the best city for sports in the United States. Can you believe that? Beating out New York, Charlotte, and Los Angeles. And then in the Caribbean, 600 surfers will be in Barbados from March 23 to April 2. And that's a whole lot for sports tourism. We congratulate Barbados on their efforts for sport tourism. Later this year, though, Jamaica will host the NCAA Division I basketball in Montego Bay in November, and 8 new teams will be in Jamaica. Now, the guest we have today has extensive experience in sports administration, sports management, and you're going to hear a little more. He has focused on what we describe as minor sports, but it's a minor sport with great connections. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers, let's welcome the father of squash, Douglas Beckford. Douglas, welcome to the Sports Exchange.
Well, a pleasure to be here, Carol. Thank you very much for that glowing introduction.
Well, the early days of squash, you were a part, although you claimed you joined late. But tell us how squash came to Jamaica.
Well, squash in Jamaica started really with the military. There's still a court at Oak Park Camp. There was a court at one point at Newcastle. Mm-hmm. And if you walk along the battlements at Port Royal, I believe you can see what looked like it had been a squash court at some point in time. So then it sort of gravitated towards the Ligony Club, and Ligony Club became known as the home of squash in Jamaica. Whether rightly or wrongly, it has turned out that way.
Well, it's actually in the middle of New Kingston, middle of Kingston City.
In the middle of the city.
Right, called the Oasis. We'll talk about that. How do you think squash has impacted on Jamaica and the region to some extent?
Well, squash has developed quite rapidly in Jamaica. It had humble beginnings, but we became known as a sport that had regular competition. Mm-hmm. Where it extended throughout the Caribbean. The Caribbean Squash Association is made up of 9 countries, all of whom have very viable and extensive squash programs. And we stretch all the way from Bermuda down to Guyana. Mm-hmm. At one point, we even incorporated Venezuela, but they dropped off the bandwagon. But squash in Jamaica has been successful. We've done reasonably well in regional competition, and we've actually made a few forays outside the region. We've been to 2 World Championships. Mm-hmm.
And I think you also were at the Commonwealth Games.
Yes. Squash is hampered somewhat by not being an Olympic sport, but thankfully we were able to get into the Pan American Games, the Central American and Caribbean Games first of all, the Pan American Games and the Commonwealth Games, and we've become almost an institution in those games. So we've attended a number of major games worldwide.
Who has been the most successful squash player in Jamaica or for Jamaica?
Well, in recent times, we have, of course, Chris Binney, who was world ranked. He's almost visible squash player. Mm-hmm. a few years ago, we had a ladies champion who became, later on in life, a world champion. I won't tell you at what age, but she did win a world championship, Susan Lawrence. There was, of course, before that, there was Orville Haslam, and we can never forget Wayne Burroughs, who really championed the cause of squash throughout the region. He was our youngest ever Caribbean champion.
Talk about Ligani Club again, is that Ligani Club has almost everything.
As I said, we sort of fell into Ligani Club becoming the home of squash, because there are other venues around Kingston and there are other venues across the island. But the ones across the island are mainly in hotels, so they're not easily accessible.
Right.
And a number of the ones around Kingston are neither suitable for international competition nor also readily accessible. Ligani Club has 6 squash courts, 3 glass wall courts, and the Jamaica Squash Association actually have their office at Ligani Club. So it's become a sort of marriage of convenience. We work fairly closely together, and Ligani Club has become synonymous with squash in Jamaica.
All right, so because we're talking about the business of sport, how expensive is squash? So like you have particular shoes, rackets and gear and so on. What is the estimate cost of a full outfit to include equipment?
Well, you've kind of caught me off guard with that one. But squash is not an expensive sport. And the Jamaica Squash Association currently runs junior programs and what we term as an outreach program. And to make sure that the kids that are involved are not disadvantaged by not being able to afford it, we have actually set up a program where shoes, rackets, balls are provided. So on the occasion when we have youngsters coming from, say, the inner city to play, they literally just arrive with a pair of sneakers and they can get equipment to play. I don't want to put a handle on the cost.
Is there any kind of footwear that's particularly required?
Yes, it has to be an indoor court shoe. Squash shoes are specific, but an indoor court shoe will get you by. And if you're not aiming to become Jahangir Khan.
Nice turn that was from Warner Brown.
Enjoy Pulse Rooms at Trafalgar, your place to stay in New Kingston. Spacious new rooms, best deal in the city, close to restaurants, banks, and much more. Rates start as low as $85. Call 876-524-5106.
Burrito's flagship location in New Kingston is at 15 St. Lucia Way. Mark Gilzine and his team are dedicated to creating your ideal game plan to revolutionize your relationship with money. We are proud of our many wins, which include bolstering our capital base to be among the strongest in the industry and facilitating the purchase of 3 U.S. companies by a Jamaican firm. We're 45 years and going strong, changing the game and moving the financial revolution forward.
GPS that give 10 people more life. Download my GPS app now.
Get the app and you can win more life. A new year you are gonna need more life. GPS are gonna light up your life with 23,000 a month for your life. Get the app and you can win more life. Now love darkness, me love my life. Discover so the energy right for the 2023 future. Well, show them the app when you walk past them. Chat where you use me now have no problem. Power in a house turn on the fan them. Report any outage or any problem. Whoa, 100 years never lie. We are give the chance to you win more life. JPS I make the future well bright. If you tell me say the app you don't bother you alive. Win more life. Download the app and you can win.
should tell our viewers and listeners that people across the board, up to 80, can I use that number, play squash, and I'll tell you why a little later. If you just joined us, you're listening to Douglas Beckford, the father of squash. He has been president of Jamaica Squash Association, secretary of the Caribbean Sports Association.
I was secretary of the Caribbean Squash Association for 2 years and president of the Caribbean Association for 3 two-year terms.
Yeah, I saw that on your profile and I wondered, how that happened?
Well, it used to be that there were biannual tournaments.
Oh.
And so between the tournaments, it has now come down to being an annual tournament. But between the tournaments, you would have an executive that would serve for 2 years as you led up to the next event.
Next event, okay.
So I at the time, in the good old days, when we had 2 years between Caribbean championships, I managed to serve 3 two-year terms.
2-year terms. What are some of the other venues across the region that can actually host great regional games and international games?
Oh, the facilities are good in most of the 9 countries that I mentioned. This year, for instance, there's Cayman, there's St. Vincent, who will be they will both be hosting the junior and senior tournaments this year.
Right.
Bermuda, way up in the north, is good. The Bahamas used to have a very good venue, but they've sort of fallen behind recently. And all the islands down the chain. Trinidad has excellent facilities. We've had Caribbean championships there. And I'd like to particularly mention Guyana, because Guyana have become really successful in squash throughout the region, and they fall into a development plan that is almost like Jamaica's, in that their squash was played at the Georgetown Club, very much like our squash is played at the Ligani Club.
Ligani Club, right.
What has happened recently, and I don't want to use this as an example for us to follow, although it would be nice, is that they have a national squash center now, and the government has built courts, and in fact are at the moment building a complex of 5 courts, which will include a doubles court, which will be the first purpose-built doubles court in the Caribbean.
That's interesting. How do we do as a region in the international games? Because of development programs like that, you mentioned that pretty much all of your playing nations have proper facilities. How then do we do in the Commonwealth, Pan American Games, and the other international competitions?
We've won medals in most of these competitions. Not all the countries do well, except perhaps at Central American and Caribbean level. They've done fairly well. Pan American Games, we've had success at Pan American Games, and we compete fairly successfully at the Commonwealth Games also.
Oh, all right, that's interesting. So Ligani Club has squash courts. They also have tennis courts. How many tennis courts?
Ligani Club has 6 squash courts, 8 tennis courts, and now has 2 pickleball courts.
Pickleball folks have attracted investment from LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Tom Brady, and the networks in the United States are struggling over who to carry, when to carry, and what. What are the chances of having major pickleball in Jamaica at Ligani Club?
At the moment, it has been seen as mostly recreational. There are a few people who do play, but there's no institutionalized pickleball at Ligani Club. But there are 2 courts, and they're good courts. They're very nicely laid out. And the only problem with it is that they don't have lights. So and of course they're outdoor.
Right.
And pickleball doesn't do very well in wind. So you have to be there when there's no wind and when there's sun.
All right, so let's take you back a little to squash and the other minor sports, but with a focus on that. What is the ideal investment? What would you really want to see, whether in infrastructure or even money? Can we tie anything to squash and the other minor sports?
I would like to see more investment in infrastructure, because I think that it is not ideal to have squash stationed in a private members club. That's one of the issues that we have had. But we came into that of necessity more than anything else, because Ligani Club developed their courts. The courts are in great condition, and it was a marriage of convenience. I'd like to see an entity where there were, say, 3 singles courts and a doubles court, for instance. That would be ideal for hosting international events. I mean, 5 would be better, but 3 and 1 I think we could live with.
Does it require any particular kind of land space, or, meaning how would that look on an independent way?
It could be done on a fairly don't want to say small piece of land, because you then want to have other aspects of sports along with it. I mean, it would be ideal to have a gym. Ligani Club has a gym. Ligani Club has a swimming pool. And I'm beginning to sound like I'm doing an infomercial for Ligani Club.
But it does have some great facilities.
And Ligani Club is actually, you call me the father of squash. Ligani Club is actually very close to my heart too, because I've had some administrative experience there.
But private clubs internationally, though, does have the kind of nomenclature and let's call it temperature, like what Ligani Club does. So it's fine.
We've played international events at a number of private clubs, especially in South America and Central America. You find that country clubs have a squash facility.
Right.
And so you go there for squash, but it really is a country club that you're visiting.
Visiting, right. But even golf, a lot of the golf clubs are actually private clubs that have access to land.
And have golf as part of
their yes,
structure.
I don't think that that kind of formula works though. But looking ahead for squash in the Caribbean and even Jamaica, to be more specific, what does the future look like from your perspective?
Oh, I think if Jamaica continue along the course where we manage to develop our juniors, of course that is where the future is. I mean, it's nice to say that you have a senior champion, but it starts with the juniors. So the current junior program that we're pursuing, I think, will take us a far way to becoming more successful as a squash nation.
All right. In terms of balance between gender, male and female, how are we looking? Are we balanced?
We're doing very well.
From a physical standpoint, how fit do you have to be to play squash?
Oh, you should be extremely fit. I mean, there are a lot of people that think that you can get into squash to become fit. That's not the way to do it. You have to be fit to play squash.
You have to come to the table.
You have to come to squash as a fit person. And then you can improve your fitness, because there's nothing that improves your fitness better than squash. It's an excellent game for cardiovascular activity, and it really does a lot for your fitness, which is why it's a good recreational sport.
Yeah, but all right. So how fit are you? Because you are a squash champion at every age level that you have participated in. Walk me through that. So Dougie would have played squash. He played some badminton, and before we close the program, we're going to talk a little bit about his cricket life too. But tell me about squash. You were over 60 champion.
I came into squash. I would have to say fairly late in life, because I first played for Jamaica in 1979, and I would have been fairly old for the team at that time. In fact, I managed to play for Jamaica from 1979 up until 2019. So I've had a fairly long career. And if I am allowed to blow a trumpet,
oh, absolutely, go right
small
ahead.
Trumpet, I am the only person in the Caribbean to have won Caribbean titles at over 40, over 50, and over 60.
And possibly could win an over 70.
They don't have one.
I know. Well, exactly. He actually still plays pretty well. If you happen to come on to Ligani Club in Kingston, you can ask for Douglas Beckford, and he probably would engage you in a game of squash. Becky, before we go on, we talk about the things that you have done. I mentioned cricket. Take me back. You know, you went to Jamaica College and you did pretty well in school, and you did sports. Tell me about your sporting life.
I played Sunlight Cup cricket for Jamaica College. We started out with Colts. I don't know what the structure is like now. I believe they call it under 14 or.
Right, they don't have
they
Colts.
don't call it Colts.
It's
But
for another sport.
I played Colts, and my second year in Colts, I actually played Sunlight Cup cricket. So I played Sunlight Cup cricket from when I was 14 years
14,
old.
right.
Yeah. And then having left Jamaica College, I didn't play cricket at all. I didn't play club cricket. Although I joined Kingston Cricket Club and was very keen on it, I didn't play. That's for another reason, and those people who know me will probably know why I didn't continue with my cricket career. But then I went on to play a little bit of badminton, and I went into motor rallying and racing.
I was waiting for that.
That segue.
Yes, that had the blood rushing to your...
That segue, I will just mention that my first experience in rallying, I actually was on a rally team with my brother, Chester Beckford, and none other than the Honorable Mike Fennell.
Yeah, Mike,
So-
as you know, has been a guest on this program. So you
Right,
see
so-
they're all connected.
So we were a team of 3 in rallying. But then I went on to race at Vernon Field, did some hill climbing, stuff like that. And then I got to the point where I decided that it wasn't the right thing for me to be doing with 2 young children at the time. So I gave up that and went into squash.
Oh, okay.
That was in the mid-70s.
But you did some administrative work at the Kingston Cricket Club. Tell me a little bit about that. Because cricket would have been the choice for a gentleman of your age at the time.
Well, I came into cricket again much later because, and only through the instrumentality of my very good friend Alva Anderson, who became president of Kingston Cricket Club and was very instrumental in World Cup cricket in the West, in the Caribbean.
In the Caribbean.
So when he became president of Kingston Cricket Club, I served as honorary secretary for 9 years.
Oh.
I seem to do everything for long periods of time. So I did 9 years at Kingston Cricket Club.
You won't pull me to make any
And-
inappropriate comments on this program.
And I also served as Kingston Club's representative on the Savannah Park Holdings Limited, which I also did for a long time.
For a long time.
Yes.
You did some senior administrative work, you know, as part of the Olympic movement and so on. Tell us where you went as deputy chef de mission.
I traveled mainly as manager of the squash team, and was pulled into JOA management areas on 2 occasions. I did a short stint in Kuala Lumpur in 1998, where I replaced the then deputy chef de mission on short notice, and then I also was deputy chef de mission. That actually was to LG Gooden,
Good, okay.
another very good friend who is no longer with us. And then I went to El Salvador as deputy chef de mission to Clayton Solomon.
Oh, okay. All right. Minor sports is a thing. So we have cricket, football, netball, basketball, track and field in Jamaica, and a host of other sports. But there's a group of minor sports that has impacted on Jamaica and the Caribbean extensively. Give me your hopes and dreams before we go about what you think we can do in Jamaica in particular, but also across the region.
Well, first of all, I know it is traditional to call our sports minor sports. You know that I don't consider them as being minor at all, because I think they have a tremendous impact, and I think they have managed to attract a very elite sort of athlete.
And that's
there are
right.
There are a number of minor sports that have attracted excellent athletes, and so in terms of their impact on national life. I don't see that as being minor.
Okay.
We're minor in the
Numbers.
in the numbers,
Which is why they call it that.
and in the interest that we get, especially from sponsors and the major administrative groups. So
what are one last wish for squash in particular?
some investment at a national level rather than at what we would term a club level.
Okay.
I'd like to see squash become a bigger draw.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it. Douglas Beckford, the father of squash, the grandfather of squash. He has done so many things, Ligony Club, and he continues. By the way, he consults just about everybody. Jamaica hosted the senior Caribbean Squash Association competition at Ligony Club in the summer of 2022. And trust me, he did everything from cleaning the courts to making sure that all the athletes played under perfect conditions. This has been the Sports Exchange. My name is Carole Beckford, and my guest today was Douglas Beckford. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.